What's up, guys? It's your man KP67s coming back to you with another character review video circling the bounty hunters here in this case. We've already covered 3 of the big 5, Boba Fett, Jango Fett a couple months ago, and Embo most recently. And I wanted to go on and finish off my big 5 bounty hunters by talking about Bossk, and then later on we'll be talking about Dengar. So, in this case, we're going to be talking about Bossk. He is a bounty hunter scoundrel, and he is a tank. Surprisingly enough, he's the only tank of all the bounty hunters. Every other bounty hunter is an attacker besides Cad Bane, who is the only support character. And he is also a leader. All bounty hunters essentially will have this tag because they all have a leadership. So, looking at his stats here, you can see that his strength is pretty good. He's got a bit of damage to him, he's got a bit of health to him, and he's got a bit of armor to him. His agility and tactics are kind of in the middle, so his critical chance is not going to be that great. And obviously, since he's mostly physical damage, his special rating is not the best either. When we look at his health and protection, you can see that I modded him up pretty heavily for protection. Very, very speedy. He's like a speedy lizard, what can I say? And a bit of tenacity as well. I could probably bump that up a bit more, but honestly, I'm happy with like 75%. As you can see here, he's got a good amount of physical offense. He's over 3,000. But his critical chance is not the best. Decent amount of survivability. His armor does benefit from his own leadership, which we're going to get into. And special stuff, nobody really cares for him. So, looking at his gear requirements, his gearing is kind of tough, but not as bad as some of the other bounty hunters. He requires 5 Carbantes, 5 stun cuffs, and he requires 2 stun guns. But that's about it. He does require like a piece of the Mark 8 eyeball, but that is for actually like one of his G12 pieces, so he doesn't actually require any golden eyeballs, so that's actually not a bad thing. So overall, not a super tough gear, which I like, and pretty generally decently easy to get to gear 12 compared to other bounty hunters. Now, looking at his abilities here, we're going to start with his basic called Prey on the Weak. Deal physical damage to the target enemy, and if the target is the weakest enemy, this attack does double damage and is guaranteed to critically hit. So this kind of pigeonholes Bossk's basic to try to hit the weakest character, whether it's the most damaged character or from the outset the weakest general character. This is not a move that you're going to use right out the gate. This is definitely something that comes in handy later, but knowing that he can do double damage and guaranteed critical hits actually benefits him quite well. So, besides that, his basic is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. That's all she wrote, basically. Going into his first special here called Hunting Party. So he deals physical damage and he stuns the target for a turn. And then this is a mass assist attack, so he calls all other bounty hunters who deal 60% less damage. I know 60% seems pretty steep, right? But with the way that you can mod the bounty hunters with a lot of critical chance and critical damage, it really doesn't affect their damage all that much, if I'm being honest. If the target is the weakest enemy, you reduce all assisting bounty hunter allies' cooldowns by 1. Since his contract helps you pinpoint out who the weakest enemy is, at least while you have to complete the contract, it's relatively easy, assuming there's no taunts on the field, to actually target whoever you want and then blast them, which then reduces cooldowns for everyone else if you happen to use a special somewhere else. So, pretty useful, great mass assist ability, and it allows the bounty hunters to just quickly DPS down someone decently quickly, at least removing protection, if not removing protection, doing some serious damage and debuffing, which is what they need to do. His second special is Predator Instincts. So this is actually pretty nice. This is a self-cleanse. He dispels all debuffs off himself. He recovers health 50%, and then he gains Frenzy and Taunt for 3 turns, while every other bounty hunter, including himself, gain offense up for 2 turns. So the key thing here is that he gains Frenzy. This move, essentially, whenever someone else uses a special, will immediately give Bossk a 100% turn meter, and then he can go again and again and again for 3 of his own turns. So if you were to pop Frenzy almost immediately, not only are you setting up a taunt on a very tanky character, but you're also allowing this character to quickly rip through and get his mass assist ability off, get a couple basics off. He moves very, very quickly as a result because of Frenzy. So very, very useful, and honestly should always be the first move that you do, assuming that he won't be dispelled. But that's where his Zeta comes in for his unique, and we're going to get there. Getting on to his leader ability. His leader ability is extremely useful for how squishy the bounty hunters are. So all bounty hunters gain 50% max protection. Remember Embo, protection really matters to him. Remember, most of the bounty hunters are pretty squishy, so protection matters to them. And 50% tenacity. Also great because that means you can use your specials, you won't be stunned, you won't be missing turns, you won't be ability blocked. All bounty hunter allies, get this, gain 100% defense while at full health. So as long as you're at full health, which means load them up with protection and, you know, recover your health if you're going against Night Sisters, every single bounty hunter turns into a verifiable tank, honestly. Whenever an enemy suffers a debuff or resists a debuff, all bounty hunters recover 5% health and protection. This is huge. This makes Bossk a very, very strong leader because he can just keep regenerating health and protection for everybody, which you can obviously see the application in a mode like Grand Arena, where banners are tied to finishing with full health and protection. Now, getting to the contract component, his contract, like all bounty hunters, he has a contract. You have to deal damage to the weakest enemy 10 times. Again, you can tell because a targeting reticle will show up above your target, which allows you to pinpoint who you need to hit. And once you complete the contract, all bounty hunters gain plus 50 speed for the rest of the battle, and their payouts are activated. Once this goes off, guys, okay, once this goes off and the plus 50 speed kicks in, the bounty hunters become a menace. If you do not control the bounty hunters, they can become very, very difficult if you can't keep them in line, basically. So it's a very, very good payout. You would hope that they would have something based like this in his own leadership, like gain amount of speed, but Jango Fett fills that role perfectly fine. So then getting to Bossk's, oops, sorry, not his payout yet. Trandoshan Rage is unique. So Bossk has, guess what, another 50% defense and 50% max health while he has taunt, and gains 50% offense and 50% health steal while attacking buffed enemies. So his stats gain a lot. If you're going against buffed enemies, he's doing a lot of damage. If he's taunting, he's really defensive. And in his leadership here, when Bossk loses the taunt, he gains taunt for 1 turn if the weakest enemy has protection. This acts very similar to the old Ben Zeta taunt, or even kind of like how Night Sister Zombie keeps refreshing her taunt every time she takes a turn. It's a taunt that just won't go away. It can really screw with your opponent. It can really slow your opponent down, especially if they're trying to get at a more squishier bounty hunter like Greedo or Boba Fett. So very, very useful as a Zeta, and I highly recommend it, honestly. And then finally, we get to Bossk's payout. Once the contract pops off, obviously you have the contract reward, part of the leadership. He's going to get plus 50 speed off his own leadership, but his payout allows him to recover 5% health and protection at the start of his turn, and half that amount, so 2.5%, whenever another bounty hunter ally starts their turn. So he is, much like a lizard, regenerating every turn that some bounty hunter takes, which allows you to slowly but surely just recover a good chunk of health and protection by the time his turn comes around, and then he gains even more on top of it. Very regenerative, very survivable as a result. So, keeping his abilities in mind here, guys, we're going to go over and talk about his modding and the modding strategy behind him. So, number one, because of Frenzy, because you want this taunt to go off quickly, and because he is very fast as a tank, you want speed on him. 100% you want speed. You want to get that speed up as much as possible, and based on his leadership, which grants extra protection, and the more protection you have, the longer your defense stats stay up, you want protection on everybody too. So, 65k, you're looking at half that coming back to you just from his leadership. Tenacity is also helpful since he gives tenacity in his leadership. So as you can see here, I've got speed here, I have protection, I've got tenacity just to kind of boost his tenacity a little bit more. You could also turn that into protection, but I find, you don't want him getting debuffed, and then more protection after that. Obviously, you want to give him a little bit more offense, and you really don't need to give him critical chance because his basic will just instantly crit whenever he attacks the weakest enemy, and that's the person you should be targeting. And beyond that, guys, like, all you really need is speed, protection, offense, potency. Those would be the big secondaries that I would try to gun for when it comes to Bossk. As you can see here, I don't really have a matching set in the middle. That's because this offense triangle is actually pretty decent. But if I could get like a health triangle there with protection and, a good amount of speed as well, I'll probably switch it out just to give him an extra health set to make him that much more tankier. So, like I was saying about Bossk, Bossk is a part of my Big 5 Bounty Hunter list, which, like I said before, consists of Boba Fett, Jango Fett, Bossk himself, Embo, and Dengar. Bossk is very, very good as a regenerative lead. He has very, very good capability in TW, even though the bonuses for TW are no longer present for him. And as well as being a great offensive leadership for going against characters in Grand Arena. I know Night Sisters give people a lot of problems. Some people use the Imperial Troopers, but honestly now with the way that they've reworked the Bounty Hunters, you really need very well-developed Imperial Troopers to kind of walk through them. But the Bounty Hunters do an amazing job at shutting out the Night Sisters, keeping plague off of them, and just annihilating the Night Sisters between Boba Fett and Jango Fett, who prevent revives, Embo, who can dispel taunts. You've got a mass assist from Bossk where he can just hit anybody he wants, as well as having Frenzy to just keep shooting and shooting and shooting, as well as having his leadership, which allows for a ton of regeneration. You can always finish with, a full 60 banners, assuming, you don't do something stupid. Like sometimes I throw Embo's hat and I'm like, oh no, he lost protection. That happens here and there. I really have to pay attention to that. But overall, guys, he's a very, very good leader. Between him and Jango Fett, actually, I think Jango is probably the best offensive lead of the Bounty Hunters, whereas Bossk is the best defensive lead of the Bounty Hunters. If you just want to like hammer somebody in TW, Jango might be the way to go, unless you're facing a Night Sister wall, in which case, hey, use Bossk. And like I said, I mostly save the Bounty Hunters to go up against Night Sisters, First Order, non-meta squads that I can beat relatively easily and save my harder hitting squads. So there's a little bit of a Grand Arena tidbit for you. Overall, very, very good character. He also has probably the best tank ship in the game right now, the Houndstooth. So just by having this ship, which I'll talk about later, he is essentially an essential farming character for anybody who's starting up. If you're looking for a 5-man bounty hunter squad, he is also a tank. He is the only tank. Very, very useful. And really, there's no disadvantage to having Bossk. He's just that good of a character. And hopefully we get more tanks in the Bounty Hunter faction who can help synergize further with Bossk and make him that much better. Alright guys, that concludes this review. If you liked the review, please leave a like, leave some comments. Again, feedback is always appreciated. This is a constantly evolving series, basically, I've turned it into. But, I want to make this, by the players, for the players, basically. And I know that everybody appreciates the information I hand out. I get a lot of great comments from people, very constructive as well. I love it. Keep it up, guys. And I will talk to you with another review later. All right, guys. Have a good night.